Welcome to Batchademia, a podcast so educational two professors could be hosting it. Hi, I'm Dr. Danielle XC, and joining me is Dr. Bill Henneman.
Welcome everybody to Batchademia. This week, we have one of my favorite people on campus, Megan Vogt-Kostner, or as I call her, MVK in all of my emails. So Megan works at UNI. She has 2 master's degrees from UNI, one in social work and one in women and gender studies. She's originally from Western Iowa, very small town. What town, Megan?
Dow City, Iowa.
Oh,
550 people.
Nice. Do you have a Casey's?
We do not.
Do you have a stoplight?
No.
Wow. Okay. So that is, judging by like Iowa small town, that is actually really Iowa small town if you don't have a Casey's and you don't have a stoplight.
Yep. Nope. Neither.
Do you have a gas station?
We do.
Okay.
What kind? Two until like 5 years ago, probably longer than that. Like 10 years ago, and we only have one now.
Okay. What's the company of the gas station?
I think it's a Cinex, but I'm not sure about.
Gotcha. In your free time, you love to swim, hang out with your family. You have 2 small children, and you love terrible reality television. So you're a Teen Mom fan, which I am a big Teen Mom fan as well, until CFU took away MTV.
What?
But Teen Mom is now on Netflix, so Elaine and I have been watching it. Like, that's kind of our mindless if we turn it on while we work and kind of sit by each other. We call it parallel play. So like where we don't actually talk like little kids do. And then true crime documentaries. Yeah. What else? What else should we know about you?
I think that's really the basis of my life. I have two kids under 2.5, and Teen Mom, I really got into it because the girls are my same age. And so everyone was getting pregnant when I was 16, and now we're all almost 30 and living the life. But they have like 12-year-olds now.
Yeah. I saw a picture of one of the kids from like the first season, and it was like, oh my God, they got teenagers almost. Like,
yeah, crazy, huh?
Yeah. You also are the reigning expert at the university in Qualtrics. So poor Megan, like word got out at some point that if you have a question, bother Megan and she will do the Qualtrics for you.
Yep, I create surveys on campus. It's great.
I'm like your biggest botherer, I think, right now.
Well, what's funny is, so I had Danielle's position before her, and like our boss, Patrick, if you're listening, would just basically tell me to go bother Megan because he knew he was bothering her too much. So he'd be like, Bill, can you go ask Megan about this survey? Because I think she's getting tired of me. And so now apparently this is Danielle's mantle. Someday she will graduate and we'll find another person to bother Megan constantly.
I can't even blame Patrick. I think I'm just like, Qualtrics, it sounds like something that people that do research that's different than the research I do use. And so I'm so grateful for you, Megan. Yes. And I'm just amazed at you're so great at your job, and I know that you're managing 2 littles, and you know my brain just didn't work then.
It's life. It's okay. Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on this week.
No, we're way excited to have you. So we start out, question of the week. What irreplaceable skill would you bring to a group during the zombie apocalypse?
I'm kind of a scavenger. Like, I just like to bring things together and try to figure out what I can make work. So I think that's what I would bring. A skill that I already have versus something I really like to be able to use, like fight well, but I know that that's not a skill that I have already. So
you're a really good swimmer, right?
Yeah, I love to swim. Yeah, and I love to teach people to swim, but I could do that too.
It depends on what zombie literature you're reading, if the zombies could swim or if they can't swim. So being able to like tread water forever could get you out of a really bad situation because you could just swim out and then they couldn't grab you.
That's a good point. I also really want to be the mermaid from a few weeks ago on your podcast. I was very excited to hear about that.
Yes, that's right. The siren. I'm a few books past that now. I just finished up a rom-com novel about planners. So like a woman who designs planners. It was lovely.
You are solely keeping like these weird genres of, somebody was like, I'm going to write a rom-com about a woman who makes planners. And they're like, no one will read it. And they're like, nah, there's one lady in Iowa who's.
And that lady is me. Yeah, I had to think because I was like, I don't have very many useful skills.
Yeah,
and
as a faculty member, we don't. Yeah.
No, yeah. So I have like strengths and this is a strength and a weakness. I'll like eat anything. So, you know, I'll eat the food that's around and to sustain me. But the bad news is I also need a lot of food to sustain me. So, you know, I'm not picky, but I might go through our supplies quickly. And I can also do arm balancing poses from yoga really well, which I don't think really is useful, but like I could look cool before I died.
Are you a climber? Can you climb pretty well?
I don't think so.
Okay. I always tell people I am a technological idiot savant. Like, I don't really know what I do, but at work, at the gym we're at, whenever the technology breaks, everyone's like, Bill, and it's like they think I have some magical power, but really I just kind of stare at it. I've moved some wires around and it always works. And so I feel like that would be and it would set up for like really good like tension, you know, as like the zombies are about to get us and I'm like trying to fix the car or something, and then it would work right away and then we'd get away.
That's useful in real life and zombie life.
Right.
It is until people know. And then it's kind of like owning a truck. Like no one wants to be your friend until they have to move. And then they're like, nice truck, Bill. All right. So episode in one word. What do we got?
I always just want to say vulnerability because I just keep hearing that. Like, so I started listening to or watching The Bachelor, Bachelorette again because of your guys' podcast. So, well, I guess I watched it on Netflix or like binged like different seasons. So the Mesnick season, it's on Netflix currently, or Andy season on Hulu. So I can binge those, but I've never like actively stayed consistent until this podcast came out. And it's a vulnerability, and I love like just keeps coming up. And I love Brene Brown's like pieces on vulnerability. So I really want to listen to what she has to say when Matt and Claire and all these individuals are just like throwing the term around. But I'll pass on that word for this week, and I'll just say, something about Mean Girls again. So I want to hyphenate Mean Girls and use that as one word.
Hyphenation's okay.
So my word's filler. I feel like these episodes are filler episodes. And so friend of the podcast, Connie, wrote us in, and I think she was right that we didn't really learn anything new through this. And so it felt like filler to me.
I have a theory that these episodes, these after Women Tell All, are actually like 12-minute episodes if you cut out the reshowing of everything that's happened. It's really just a way to sell ad space. I said nothing burger. I just felt like it was just like nothing. I rewatched it again, hoping I would get like really good, but it just seemed kind of boring. So
I also feel like, sorry.
Oops.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just asking if nothing burger was one word.
Well, I hyphenated the hell out of it, so yeah.
So I also feel like the final rose is going to be a filler episode.
Oh no, I think the final rose. Well, I think so where they like bring the people back and talk to them.
So I think that's going to be useful, but I don't think like actually him like proposing is gonna. I think again, I think we all know it's coming because of the Rachel Lindsay stuff going on, the Chris Harrison stuff. But I think like after the final rose is going to be phenomenal, and it's really going to kind of dig in. I'm really excited to see what Rachel has to say. Rachel Kirkconnell, just because she's been posting on her Instagram saying, I do have stuff to say, I just can't say it yet, but it'll be coming. So I'm really excited to see what she has to say.
So that's a really good segue. This was recorded supposedly before all of the Chris Harrison and Rachel Kirkconnell's comments. So I know there were some people that are like, why is he even on this? They are saying that it was recorded before all of that went down. I am suspicious that maybe it happened after, and they were like, just backdate it, but whatever. We'll suspend belief, but Chris will not be on the After the Final Rose episode. It'll be Emmanuel Acho. Did I pronounce that right, Danielle?
I think, yeah, it's maybe Acho.
Acho. I looked it up and I tried to do it several times, but then you like get in your head, so and he wrote Uncomfortable Conversations with Black Men. Anything to
Has
add?
a wonderful YouTube series on that. There's also, I really enjoyed this, a wonderful scholar in my field, Robin Borland, just published a piece through Slate magazine called Changing Hosts Won't Fix the Bachelor's Race Problem, and it's really good. So if you have a couple minutes and you want to read a good article, I recommend this Slate piece by Robin Borland.
And we actually have a batchademia.blogspot.com, and if you give me the link, I can post the link up there with the episode, so if people want to go there. So look at that. Look at me slipping in a plug for our website.
I guess we can probably tell when this episode was recorded based on Matt's facial hair.
Oh yeah,
So I'm excited to see what it's going to be like on next week's.
Oh yeah, good point. So we start out with MJ and Jessenia. So MJ insisted she wasn't a mean girl. Thoughts on that?
False.
Yeah.
I don't know that I buy this idea that like she just has a strong personality, and so we're just misreading it as her being mean. I was really unimpressed. Like, own it, apologize, be an adult, move on, do better.
Do you think if she was a guy, we would have given her more grace? Like if she was a guy being blunt and pushy and she was like, I just have a strong personality, we'd be like, well, yeah, it's a guy being a guy. I agree. I think she was a total jerk and she's not like owning up to it. And I felt like just about everybody else kind of owned up to the things that they did poorly.
I
But
was frustrated that they say like, well, I owned up to it to Matt. Like, okay, you owned up to it to him, but apologize for what you did to everyone in the house. Like,
well, yeah, and Matt wasn't affected by it. Like, that's the funny thing is like, why are you owning up to Matt when you're calling girls mean names? Like, you should own up and like apologize for the person that you hurt. Like, doesn't like that.
Well, there was an unwillingness to admit that their behaviors did affect the feeling in the house. Like, they kept denying that they contributed to a toxic culture at all, and that just doesn't really connect with what we saw on the show, and other women's reporting their experiences of what it felt like to be in the house. So, I mean, do I think we would give her more grace? Probably because the way that we also read bullying with men is different. So men are permitted to be more aggressive, and so there's a lot of research that shows that men do gossip and bully actually in very similar ways to women, but that we don't read it as so. Or when they're bullying another male, for example, we tolerate it because we see it as a way of disciplining that guy into being more masculine. And so we permit that behavior because it's with women, it's like, oh, when you're mean, you're acting too much like a guy, right? But when a guy does that, it's about getting the person that they're bullying to act in a more masculine way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I also think like they kept bringing up like, oh, I did it as a joke, and at some point jokes aren't funny and they're hurtful. And so I think we also have to like, there's a difference between funny and jokes that are targeted.
And that didn't work when I was a kid and I used to try to use it on my parents when I would be mean to my sisters, right? No, I was joking. And it's like, well, you punched her in the face. And it's like, but it was a joke punch. Like, I mean, you know, that's one of those things that like you didn't get away with it as a kid. Yeah. So
I also bring up like there's like an age difference, but like there's such a huge age difference in these women too.
Yeah.
So like Matt's what, 28, 29, MJ's 23, 24, Katie's 30. So I think that there's also like these like milestones in life that some of them haven't hit. And I think some of the pieces of their personality show that.
Kit's 12. Michelle, I also think some of it's like a life experience thing too, because it's like Michelle is obviously very mature and comes off as, you know, like just like she's got her stuff together, but she has a real job. And it's like you look at some of the other women and it's like, and same thing when it's the Bachelorette, some of the men, it's like, well, you don't have a real job. I'm not sure that I can trust like you to have. Yeah. So Victoria,
they're already supposedly ready to get married and get engaged right away and have kids, and like that's his life goal. And some of these women are just getting out of college or still in grad school, and you're like,
yeah,
where's this trajectory going for you? Like immediately.
You've got a lot of really bad relationships to work through. You've got, you know, breakups, then getting back together. There's a lot to look forward to. Women, don't just go straight to Matt. Victoria, hail be thy queen, is why didn't they allow her to be in the hot seat? I'm angry. I haven't passed the rage stage of this acceptance. Like, give the people what they want. Let her for 10 minutes be in that chair and just be a jerk. So she called the women lots of names. She called them a slore, which apparently is a cross between a slut and a whore. I do not condone that, but I do very much condone making up fake words. And I really appreciated her creativity in that. So I just got signed out of all of my stuff, and now I have to use my Duo sign in. So I'm flying without radar here, guys.
I think they didn't want to put her in the hot seat because they didn't want to see her push any more drama off on other people. Because every time that somebody called her out on something, it was like, yeah, but you're being too sensitive. Yeah, but I already apologized for that. Yeah, but.
So this is why Danielle, sorry to interrupt you, but I'm setting you up, Danielle. This is why Danielle and I are besties, because she sent me a text and said, I feel like she is just reusing words that a therapist told her to use, but not in the right way. And I was like, that is exactly what it is. Like what she is saying is, you know, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I loved when she like turned it on them. Like, do you just think that maybe you're an emotional person? Because you're not responding the way that I would. So like maybe the problem's you. I don't know. It was bad. But I do have an extra credit here a little bit on language. So thinking about their gender and language and hoes and sluts and all those fun words, right? So semantic of balance is something when we have an overabundance of terms to describe something related to one group, but then not very many terms related to another group. So a lot of times if you take a gender course, one thing that we might have you do as a student is to think about all the terms that we have to describe sexually active women. And, you know, when I teach this, we write them all down. So like all of the things coming out of Victoria's mouth, right? On one side. And then on the other side, what are all the different terms that we have to describe sexually active men? And what we'll sort of find is that we have way more terms to describe sexually active women than we do sexually active men. And most of them are negative. They have negative connotations instead of positive ones, where some of our terms for our sexually active men are positive. Then we might also think there's the concept of unmarked and marked terms. So for example, we might say something like a male slut. Well, why do you have to say male? Well, because definitionally, we treat slut as woman. We do this with other things, like we might say male nurse. Why not just nurse?
White
right?
trash.
What?
White trash. Like,
Yes.
why do you have to define that it's white trash instead of just they're just trash?
So that there's something by that marking of the term that we're saying that we have to distinguish it, right? We might even say that with something like Black professor, right? Why do you have to identify the professor as a Black professor? Is it because we don't attach professor with Black bodies, right? And so what does that sort of do? So, just kind of getting to think about that and then holding this in our pockets so that when we get later to talking about Brittany and the rumors that were circulating around her, one of the things that we might think about is all of these ways that women are expected to appear sexually attractive, to be sexy, but that when they display a desire for sex, we tend to judge them. So our reaction to Katie with the dildo, right? So you should look sexy. You should sound sexy. But gosh, we don't want to know that you actually might have sex. Keep that purity up, girlfriends, right? So I think that there's some education on semantic imbalance and marked and unmarked terms. And that is your extra credit for today.
Awesome.
So then Victoria says that life is a learning experience and that she is sorry. Thoughts on her apology? First off, the queen doesn't need to apologize.
I wonder her to explain what she was apologizing for at that point, because she had pushed everything off. Like, what are you actually apologizing for?
Yeah, it reminded me of when your parents would make you apologize and you'd be like, sorry. And it's like, then your parents would turn around and you'd turn to your sister and be like, I'm going to punch you when your parents walk out. Like I felt like that was exactly what Victoria, she's like, I'm sorry, life's a learning experience. And then the camera went off and she looked at Katie and she's like, flipped her off or, something like that.
Cyberbullying is not okay, right? So the way that I think that people send Victoria, mean messages isn't great either,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I also do think that there is something different about her being face to face, sharing space with these women. They know each other to a certain extent. And then to engage in those behaviors. I also would say that probably, as the kids say, hits different.
Wow.
Is that what they say? Did I get it right?
Yeah, I don't know if it's used in the correct context, but
What baby steps?
Yeah. The first step is using it, then use it correctly. So not that I know, I'm an old person as well. So
well, my other question was, how much did the producer set her up for some of this stuff for her to continuously spin out of control, right? So I think the issue I had was when she comes in, or Ryan, I think Ryan was the person, she calls her out and says, I was really upset when this person walked in, you took the crown off of their head because you claimed the queen status. And it's, how much did the producer set her up for something like that? Because I personally don't think she's that mean, where she's just going to get up and rip the crown off, where it's like, hey, this is happening, how about you get up and do this? So how much of it was played into from the Bachelor Nation themselves? And then her still getting called out on the internet's horrible. But I guess we also know, if you've ever watched a show historically, like you say one wrong word, everyone's going to put a meme up about you too.
Well, and I think the thing is, you can be a horrible person or be really mean and then also have people be mean to you. And it's like, I think that was the interesting thing about her, is that she just could not reconcile that you were mean to people and people were mean to you. Because people are mean to you doesn't give you the right to be mean to other people. And she seemed to just keep saying that over and over again, like, well, people have been mean to me online. It's like, yep, and you were mean to people. Like, both are wrong. There needs to be a resolution somehow. She also told Matt that she was hurt by what he said when she left. He said, I don't have any words for you. And then Matt smoothed it over. I felt I was a little, and I think Matt seems like a good guy, but I felt like he could have just stood by what he said, and he was like, I've got nothing but positive things to say. And it's like, but I don't, like, you called him out, you told people to quit bullying, and now you're like, but I only positive stuff for you.
You don't need to be friends with all your exes.
That's, yeah. I think it's important to be friends with some of your exes. And like, if you meet somebody who hates all their exes, it's a problem. I also think if you meet somebody who's really good friends with all of their exes, that's probably an issue as well. Like, there's a middle ground there that you want. Like, you should have at least one ex that you just don't get along with.
I just want him to keep bringing up, like, thank you for telling me this. Thank you for letting me know. Like, that's what I want him to keep saying, like, from every single episode. If anyone says, I'm falling for you, thank you for sharing this information. Like, that's all I want him to say every single time. Victoria said something, Serena said something, like, please just keep it going.
So then they bring Katie. So Victoria apologizes to Katie. Katie says, I accept your apology, but some of the hate that girls are getting is karma. And then that really, Chelsea did not like that. Thoughts?
What I think the sentiment of what maybe Katie was saying is that, hey, you engaged in actions and you're dealing with the consequences. And, I was bummed. I wanted to like Chelsea, from the first episodes, but the more screen time Chelsea got, actually, the less I liked her. I felt that was her saying, like, oh, I shouldn't have to, again, it's because they weren't really owning the fact that their behaviors had on other people, and then really didn't want to deal with the consequences. And that's not to say, oh, I want you to get cyberbullied or you had it coming. It's just like, rather to say, like, hey, you make choices and stuff happens.
And I will say the same thing for Mari. Mari kept sticking her nose in certain conversations throughout this episode that I was like, you weren't involved in that at all. Like, how do you have such a big opinion, number one? And number two, she was somebody's roommate, MJ's roommate, and MJ was called Fake. And she's like, well, I was her roommate. She was not a fake person. And it's like, you don't know that in that situation. Like, you weren't involved. I don't even know if she was still there at that time. Like,
Well,
I don't know.
I thought it was funny when she's like, she's not a fake person. It's like, well, that can mean she's a dick. Like, I mean, when somebody's like, I'm not fake, it's like, yeah, it means you're an asshole. Like, just because you say you're not fake doesn't mean that you're then a good person. Like, it just means that you do it in a very abrupt way, which I don't think is better than being fake in some ways. Like, I guess if someone's nice to me, at least they're nice to me to my face and I don't have to deal with it, as opposed to someone just being a jerk. So.
Or telling me they have a strong personality. Like, if you're a jerk, you're still a jerk, whether you have a strong personality or not.
Danielle, I agree with you too, because there's like, so I put a question in the outline, and that's what I'm looking at, where it's like, we shouldn't celebrate the online mob when they like attack somebody. However, there is this natural consequence where it's like, if you're mean to people on national television, people are going to think you're a bad person. And that's a natural consequence of your actions. And I think that's probably what's hard for people to reconcile, is this idea, like, when people are like, they just seem like a bad person because of their actions, that's one thing. But then when there's this active, like, I'm going to anonymously get on Twitter and call them, horrible names or bring their race into it. And I think maybe that's where the conversation could have been elevated, is that, like, it's one thing to call out people's behavior. It's another thing to call out who they are, that has nothing to do with their behavior. And I think that was where, that was where I was interested in it. And it was hard for me to decide, because there's some people who it's like, yeah, man, be mean to Victoria. I'm fine with that. She's a mean person. Like, she deserves some of it, but then telling her she should kill herself is not okay. So.
Well, and I think that's something that we're struggling with maybe as a culture, right? Is we recognize that there needs to be consequences, that there needs to be accountability, but trying to figure out, well, what is the right level of accountability for calling someone a hoe, right? Like calling someone a hoe, not cool, but like, what does accountability and consequence look like for that? And what's like an appropriate sort of maybe punishment, if you will, for that bad behavior? And I do think that part of what's different too is, you know, when the show is still on, you can make an ass of yourself on national TV and that'd still be embarrassing, but the ability to rewatch it and the ability for like strangers to comment and communicate with you about it in real time is so much easier now.
Right.
Yeah.
You all are both moms. Sometimes I think maybe we should just take the internet away from everybody for like a month, like when your kids, and then be like, are you going to use it correctly? Like, are you not going to use it for evil humans? Then you can have the internet back. But if not, then we'll take it away again. We'll take it away again. Serena C thought that Katie was trying to start fires. I don't know.
My question to them was, what was Katie supposed, or who was supposed to call them out, and how was that going to make it any better? Because I mean, they're still calling them out to this day, saying you did this, and they're all saying, no, we didn't. Like, we really didn't. We're not bad people. Like, it was a joke. Katie did what she needed to do to try to help the situation, I think. But
I thought that the question when they were like, so Katie, how did you see this improving your relationship with Matt? And she's like, it wasn't about my relationship with Matt. It was about like calling out inappropriate behaviors in the house and making our living situation better, right? Like, and I thought that that was so interesting that they're like, well, if she did this, she had to have done this for this like really selfish like reason that she thought that it would somehow enhance her relationship with Matt. And I was like, oh, that tells me something about how you all think about things. Yeah,
they just didn't seem to get that. And also Serena C should just be happy she was on the show that long. Like, I kind of wanted to be like, just sit down, sir. Like you had no reason to be on the show. You never had a relationship with Matt. And somehow you were just allowed to like continue on until way past your due date. Your use by date.
It's not just her. Some of the other girls did this too, but like this sort of smugness that they'd have.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, well, she was like being like that. Like, look at me, just drop some truth on things. And I was like, girlfriend, like nobody's with you right now.
Yeah.
nobody even knew your name.
Yeah. So then they talk about Brittany and Anna. Thoughts on Anna's apology? I felt like as far as apologies go, she was the one person who really like owned up. And when they were like, what was the reason you did this? She was like, there's not a good reason. Like, I think they wanted her to justify it. And she kept saying there wasn't really a good reason.
I appreciated her taking accountability. I do think that Brittany's question as to, why didn't you reach out to me and apologize is an important one. Mm-hmm. Right. But I do think that she's done some self-reflection and she's owning up and she can't take it back. And so, kind of what she said, that sucks. It sucks what she did.
Yeah.
And it sucks that she can't really make it right, but that's life.
Yeah, I think it kind of just came full circle as far as like the natural consequences of everything, right? So she realized that she was wrong. She's gotten a lot of slack, or she's gotten a lot of pressure from it, from the internet, from people across the nation who've seen this happen. And she's also getting just as much bullying as probably Victoria is about it. And she's saying, yeah, I kind of deserve it. It stinks, but I learned a lesson and I'm gonna be better. And I appreciated that from her apology.
I appreciated Brittany's statement about sex workers, and her saying, there's nothing wrong with it, but it is not something I do and it hurt my reputation. I did have a question for Danielle. Ooh, and then Megan's got a recommendation. Actually, you want to give us your recommendation, Megan?
Yeah. So there's I just saw it on Hulu the other night. I was watching it because I binged terrible TV. And there's an OnlyFans Selling Sexy documentary that recently came out based on OnlyFans, the new website that popped up kind of at the start of the pandemic. that and it just showcases bodies, and people can create their own stuff rather than go into a room, have producers showcase what they want to showcase, but people can get on there and just make different forms of art, whether it's sexual, whether it's non-sexual. I mean, there's pages on feet, if that's what you like to see. There's pages on all different types of things, but it's really interesting in how sex work's really changed over time, and different people like to see different bodies instead of just going to one shop or one location and seeing one person and what we think of as sexy. That might not be the same for everyone. And so it's a really good documentary that I recommend.
And they kept referring to Brittany as a high-end
Escort.
I thought that was really interesting because I felt like it was like a weird kind of weasel way of being like, well, she's not your common prostitute. This is a high-level escort. And I felt like even when they were talking about it, they were still, being like, but she shouldn't feel too bad because we're saying she's a high-end escort. So thoughts on that, Danielle, as a communications expert?
I mean, I think I would agree with your interpretation of what was going on there. It's sort of like, okay, well, we're going to like class it up some, or that there's like different hierarchies in our language about maybe which type of sex work we're more willing to accept as a culture, right? I actually haven't done a lot of research on sex work. Years ago, I did some research around pornography, which is part of that, but I feel like my research is probably outdated. So I need to brush up on what I know about sex work, because I think that that's interesting what you were saying, Megan, too, is from the documentary you were watching, that the way that sex work has sort of shifted and changed over time, especially in the digital age, is probably a really important one.
You okay? You look like something scared you there.
I just hit my microphone.
So let's see, we got it. Oh man, I'm taking too long on stuff today. Abigail, she's awesome. Anything people want to add?
I was really impressed by her talking about like just what communities she's in and or a part of, and which one she can't be a part of, because she does vocalize but she doesn't sign. And so I was educated on that, and I thought that was really cool that she shared.
I do think whenever you get a microphone, it's good to be able to, like, she had a big megaphone that night, and she used it for something that I think is important, and it educated people. And so I really appreciated that. You don't always get a megaphone, so when you get it, it's important to use it for good. Unlike Victoria, who took her megaphone and was like, I'm gonna steal your souls. Pieper, she did say she was blindsided. Matt said he was on the same page with her. Any thoughts on that?
I was interested to see her and Katie when they talk about their relationships. They don't really think about the other relationships occurring, and maybe that doesn't happen until later. And then you start to see, like next week when they get to go into the what's it called, the fantasy suite together, and you start thinking about like, if he's doing this with me, he's doing this with other people. Where when Pieper and Katie were on, they're just going on who knows what type of date. So I think the emotions play into it a little more when you're thinking, there might be that sexual contact, or there's more intimacy involved versus, these fun dates. And so her and Katie talk about just like, we were focused on our relationship, and I don't think realized what else was happening. So Pieper wasn't taking into account Michelle's relationship and how close they were getting. And so unfortunately, I do think that they both were really blindsided, but I don't know that he could have done anything to change that.
Well, if you're on the show, I would imagine that you have to compartmentalize to a certain extent, and that maybe helps protect you in certain ways, but it also means that you're not seeing other things. And then, of course, even if you were noticing some of those things, there's ways that watching a show back, you're going to see all sorts of things that you just didn't have access to before, or that maybe someone, maybe Michelle gets back and she talks with the other girls about her date, but there's certain things that she keeps private that like are her and Matt's. And like all of a sudden now you're seeing it on TV and you realize, oh, their relationship was in a different place than ours was. And I just didn't know that at the time.
And Pieper, right before she went home, I also remember her sitting there being like, I need more time. I need more time. I need more time. I need more time. Like, I think that she might have had a small window of time where she's like, I think I might be going home. So maybe not completely blindsided as much as she thought, but.
Well, and you rewrite your history too, like, I mean, we all do that. Our memories are not perfect. They are not VHS tapes. You're constantly rewriting what you remember. And so what she remembers now is a totally different thing than what she was feeling in the moment. So I actually have an extra credit kind of about breakups and on the topic. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the anatomy of breakups. This is one of my favorite things to talk about is breakups in class. I think they are infinitely interesting. And again, how we write our own story and how we think about how we break up in the moment versus not. So what's the anatomy of the breakup? People typically don't take breakups lightly, which I think is hard for if you are being dumped. I'm going to use the term dump. It's easy to think of the person being very crass and just doing this in the moment, but research would suggest people think long and hard about breakups. Usually they happen after there is prolonged discontent. So people are generally unhappy for a while in a breakup. Usually the discontent is gradual. So about 2/3 or about a quarter of the time, people report some big event that made them unhappy. But generally it is something that happens over time. And that is why it takes so long for people to break up, because they don't realize how unhappy they are until one day they're like, wow, I am profoundly unhappy. About 2/3 of the time, one partner wants out and the other one doesn't. So about a third of the time, both people are like, yeah, great, let's both leave. But most of the time, one person wants out and the other doesn't. Breakups are typically more like wiggling a tooth out than breaking it, which means people kind of try to break up. They try to break up. They find reasons to break up, but they don't actually do it until they reach this kind of like point. And then generally, a hallmark of when people break up is they lack repairs in relationships. So they don't actually try to repair things. Successful relationships have lots of hurdles, but people attempt to fix those hurdles or jump over them. When breakups happen, people kind of give up on that. So many people use indirect strategies when they try to break up, which means they don't just say, hey, I want to be done. They do things like they distance, they have contempt in the relationship, they spend less time. There's less research about the digital age, but ghosting people. So not answering your texts, breaking up with them on Facebook, using social media as a reason, as a way to create sticking points so that you can have that uncomfortable conversation. People do. So what that means is like, I may be dating somebody and I'll go and like a bunch of pictures of their friend. And then when they get mad, I use that as a reason to be like, why are you so jealous? We need to break up. So how does this differ from the batch? There's a firm decision point in the Bachelor, right? They have these hurdles where it's like, today we need to break up. You need to decide, where in most relationships, you kind of go back and forth. Also, it's really hard to use indirect breakup strategies in the Bachelor, right? Because if I'm dating you and I want to break up with you, I flirt with another woman when you can see, or another man, and then you get pissed and I'm like, you're so jealous, let's break up. On The Bachelor, it's totally acceptable, right? So I can't do that. It doesn't work for me. I also can't use social media, things like that. There's also this, we call it churning, and it is where people break up, they get back together, they break up, they get back together. You can't do that in Bachelor culture repeatedly. You might get one shot, right? And to the point of Serena P, I'm wondering if she is going to end up back in the show at some point, because she really likes Matt and she couldn't say anything about it on this next episode. You can do that like one time, but most relationships, people do this 2 or 3 times. They have a trial breakup and then they get back together and they do it until there is a better alternative, and then they move on to that. So that's what I got.
Woo.
Woo.
I wonder if like Matt sort of ghosted Abigail in
I
the
think
way you can ghost on The Bachelor.
I think he did with Katie. I think that date was a total like, I am shoving you over into that friend zone. You hang out there, Katie. You are an awesome person, but not my person. Let's play a prank on my friend. Right?
Going back to the Serena comment,
Yeah.
do you think she's going to come back? Do you think that she'll be the next Bachelorette? Do you think that her and Matt will end up back together? What are your thoughts on that?
Look at Megan taking control of the episode. I like it.
Sorry, I'm just really interested.
No, I love it. This is good.
I have my own thoughts, but I want to hear yours first.
I could foresee her being back, or I could foresee her being the next Bachelorette. I had heard Katie might be, but then with everything that went down, they wanted somebody, rightfully so, from a more diverse background. And I don't know if Serena's from a more diverse background, but she's Canadian. That would be very on topic for The Bachelor to be like, all right, we'll get someone diverse. We'll get a Canadian, guys.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, excited.
I think that there's ways that she'd make sense as a Bachelorette. There's also ways that I'm not sure she quite. I like Serena a lot in terms of like her energy, her personality. You feel like she would take it really seriously. But she's not as bold of a personality as like Hannah or, you know, some of the other people that have been in those roles. So that would be exciting. If she does end up back on this show, I think that they break up again. Because I think it would be so weird if they're like still together and engaged, right? And
Right.
like
And they had to play this like long con, like during the, yeah.
Like you like just see them like reaching to hold each other's hands or something. Like I think there'd be some nonverbal cues that we just weren't getting. Or it would be, or if she does end up back, I'm surprised that this episode wasn't more awkward between her and him. I don't know.
So I think it might be like a Jason Mesnick, Molly, Melissa situation where by the time he's going to come back after the final rose and be like, actually, Rachel and I aren't together anymore, but I'm still interested in Serena. But I think she is still interested in a relationship with him. I just don't think she's ready to be engaged. But I think she's also 22 and realizes that she's 22.
And like we said, the show like hammers you into that hole. You know, you have to get engaged, and it's very unnatural. I always tell students when I teach like the dating class, it's like a lot of the feelings and the things they experience are normal dating stuff. It's like all of the context around it that they like force you to be in, that's unnatural. So
that's one thing that's interesting about Bachelor in Paradise, right? Is that you don't feel like there's quite as much pressure to be engaged at the end, that you could just be like, hey, let's still be together, but like, let's go home. We're not ready to do this proposal thing.
Yeah. So some final things, thoughts about Matt not knowing that you close your eyes when you kiss. We were talking about this in the COVID pod, and I think it's because he's so damn attractive. It's like, I feel like me being middlingly level of attractive, that got corrected real quick, or I wasn't going to get kissed anymore, right? It's like, close your damn eyes, Bill. But him, it's like, there's always another girl willing to kiss him.
He's in like the John Hamm bubble.
Yep.
Like seen that episode of 30 Rock.
Yep.
You know, he's got that attractiveness bubble, that body privilege.
Yep. Thoughts on Chris awkwardly talking about Matt's boner out of the hot tub? Which, first off, don't cover up, Matt. Like, this isn't 8th grade anymore. You don't have to put your stocking cap over it. Just, that's what I liked about, what was the guy's name from last season that they had to blank out his boner? The guy from Canada.
Oh,
yeah. I just appreciated that he was just like, yep, it's happening, guys. Like,
well, I was more weirded out right before that when they're like, the producers are zooming in on Serena's butt, and I was like, I don't need to see this. Like, her butt's there, like
with like the pseudo porn music, like bounce. Yeah.
I don't know, a little creepy there more than him mentioning Matt.
Thoughts on Oh, go ahead.
It was so cringy. It was just cringy.
Yeah. Thoughts on any of those weird like challenges they had him doing that we didn't get to see? I guess I didn't realize we never get to see like some of that stuff, like the drink the egg. Kid played hide and seek exactly like a rich kid who probably played hide and seek with their nanny did. Like you can tell she had never had to like look for an older sibling for like hours and them hide, and like their parents just be like, just figure it out, man. Like,
and she was like looking behind like little teeny tiny things like your leaves, like Matt's a big human, dude. Like you're not missing him.
it's like when you like when an animal's kept in captivity and you release them into the wild and they have no point of reference. Like that was Kit. She was like, what am I doing?
She does not have the zombie survival skills.
No. Yeah, she would be one of the first people I would shove out of the party. I call them zombie fodder.
I also didn't really like understand the bug ring game date thing. That was weird to me in general.
Like, which reality show are we on? Like, are we
I
on
think
Survivor or
the interns were running out of stuff to do, and they were like, "You ever seen Fear Factor? Maybe we could. Let's do that."
it's like swallow an egg, raw egg, and now make out with each other.
All right, so episode and a statement and predictions. What do you got? Who does he end up with, or who does he not end up with? And the episode and a statement.
He's gonna end up with engaged to Rachel, but I think he's gonna end up with Serena, as I mentioned before. I think it's gonna come back full circle. Episode and a statement. Let's go. Like, move forward.
Ooh, that's good. I think my episode in a statement is be accountable, folks. Be accountable. In terms of predictions, I still think we're all gonna cry when he chooses Rachel at the end. I don't know who I think is gonna be the next Bachelorette, but I think Serena P has great potential. Yeah, that's what I got.
Yeah, I'm with you. Own your shit. I know I've used that before, but it's like, if you're going to be an ass, at least be accountable for being an ass. Don't try to explain away being a jerk. You know, don't be like, I'm just real. It's like, fine. But then when you do something stupid, own it, you know, if you're that real. So I think he ends up with Rachel. So, all right, MVK, the floor is yours. Shout outs. Anyone you want to shout out to, you get the last word.
I'm just gonna say shout out to everyone who listens to this episode and keep listening.
Yeah.
Woo! All right, everyone have a
I can. So
thank you so much for being on.
of course, good to see you guys.
Yep, everybody have a good weekend. You've been listening to Batchademia with your hosts, Doctors Danielle McGew and Bill Henniger. All opinions expressed on this show are solely the opinion of the person who spoke them. If you like our podcast, please consider following us, leaving us a 5-star rating, and a positive review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Also, please share with your friends, family, and other ardent Bachelor content lovers. If you have comments or questions you would like us to address on the show, you can email us at batchademia@gmail.com or on the Twitter with the handle @batchademia. Thanks for listening.